Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday evening lecture series. This hybrid presentation is being recorded. The title of tonight's lecture is Birding in Maine, Participating in the Field Ornithology Workshop at the Audubon Society's Hog Island Camp. And it'll be presented by Adam Zurgable, a naturalist at Oregon Ridge Nature Center. Each year, the Maryland Ornithological Society, the Baltimore Bird Club's parent organization, awards scholarships to teachers and naturalists who work with young students and want to increase their knowledge of bird biology and ecology. As a 2021 scholarship recipient, Adam will share his experience attending a week-long Hog Island field course. He will describe how he plans to incorporate all the skills he learned into Oregon Ridge's Nature Center programs, where he works as a volunteer naturalist. And with that, Adam Zurgable, you have the stage.
Thank you. All right, well, this is my first lecture, so we'll see how far off the rails this goes. But yeah, so a little backstory about me. I was a volunteer at the Maryland Zoo since 2002. My wife got involved with Kathy Woods with Phoenix Wildlife during that time, and I got roped into doing some of the outreach for Kathy using the skills and the things I picked up in the zoo. So, but then COVID hit, and the zoo actually restructured. They let up some of their part-time employees go. They restructured their volunteer program, and the volunteering with the animal ambassadors that we take out on grounds or off grounds even. They nixed that because he wants to get a lot of people together looking at animals when there's COVID going around. So, and of course, all the festivals that Kathy went out to dried up as well. So, luckily, I had a friend, Elizabeth Cato, over at Oregon Ridge, that I reached out to and said, you guys aren't doing your programs because of COVID. What's going on with your birds? Why don't I come over and exercise them? Get them, keep their tolerances up on the glove, get their socialization continuing. So that turned into Raptors on the Ridge, the volunteer program where myself and some of the volunteers I've recruited, many of which are from the zoo, we take the birds out and pretty much exercise. And if we talk to people, great. If not, we're exercising those birds out in the raptor garden, they call it. We have a special area now. But during that time, Elizabeth said that, hey, there was this scholarship from MOS available to attend this Audubon bird camp. She had actually she won that scholarship in 2019. So she attended in that June before COVID hit. So she encouraged me to apply for it, which I did. So with her help and Martha Johnston, you guys know Martha Johnston. She needed somebody in MLS to give a letter of recommendation, and she was kind enough to do that over a phone conversation. So I guess she had faith in me to put that letter out there. So I was able to attend in 2021. So next slide. I'm going to keep this kind of informal. There's a small group here and people online. So I didn't quite know how to organize this presentation because I didn't want the typical family vacation slideshow that everybody just glazes over and goes through. But what I've done is I've structured this around what activities, if you attend, what activities you're going to do, what to expect, what from food to housing to what birds you might see. So that's what we'll go through that. And if you want to attend, I think the field ornithology class is actually happening very soon. So since this was supposed to be done in April, we had some time then to apply for it, but not so much now. But next year certainly you can do that. Has anybody been to Maine? All right. Okay. All right. So it's a 10-hour drive.
Maine or to Hog Island?
Either one. Have you been to Hog Island?
That's when I started birding. Then my early birding, which is great introduction.
That is a great, that's like the epitome of introductions. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's a 10-hour drive. Some people flew there and had a ride share situation when they got there, but I decided to drive. And so 10 hours, and let's start with the fact that it's an island. So you arrive there and you're going to be ferried across. Everything from supplies to luggage to everything else gets sent across through these ferries. And you check in with the staff. That's Scott Weidensaw, if you're familiar with his books and things. But it's really nice because they start everyone, talking about what meal preference do you have?
That's for this.
All these things are pretty well talked about.
We can't hear you.
But I realized when I got there, everybody was really into birding. And full disclosure, I'm not really a
Don't do anything.
birder. I really dig the natural history birds, the idea of presenting birds.
There's a cat box here. Let me see.
And all their adaptations.
Sure.
But I don't have checklists. I don't get into that. But people up there, man, you had your binoculars strapped to you 24/7, cameras, everything else. But as soon as you're there, as you probably know, there's birds flitting all around. They've got the scope set up even before you get on the ferry. While you're waiting in the parking lot, they've got spotting scope set up and you're ready to go. So, but they divide everyone up into paroons and guillemots, two birds, to make just the activities a little bit more smaller and a little more manageable. So so we had lots of excursions, activities. The next slide. And so, speaking of activities, we post the next day's activities on the board. There you go. So, yeah, after a 10-hour drive, this is the first day. So after a 10-hour drive, we were hoping to sleep in, but they had us up at 5:45. By the way, everything's optional. You don't have to get up, but bird walks every morning, breakfast, and then you can see they kind of break you into different groups for the different events. But there wasn't a lot of downtime. You go there and you are experiencing ornithology from the time you get up to the time you go to sleep. Yeah, I was debating whether to go out for that bird walk, but when you're that close to the middle of June on the probably easternmost side of the United States, the sun's going to get you up. So I was out there, and cool story, the very first day, we went out on the pier for a bird walk, and we were looking across the bay, and there was a family of eider going across, and they would, be swimming across, and there was a juvenile bald eagle that began stooping and coming down, trying to get some breakfast, and it was just exciting to see the offense and defense happening. Like the eiders would spread out as they started looking across the water, and as soon as they saw that eagle come down, they clinched back up to try to be as defensive as possible. This juvenile bald eagle, probably, there was a lot. Scott Weidensaw was with us, with our group, and he's like, that eagle put a lot of energy into this eider chick. As soon as he said that, the eagle got one and went out for it. So just to see that from the very beginning, the very first day, the very first morning, I was like, okay, this is worth the price of admission. This is pretty cool. So, all right, next slide. Hold on. There you go. So, feeding birders, I'm sure you're used to this. Constantly looking up through binoculars. They have lots of walks, lots of hikes. Hog Island isn't that big. I'm sure you know, it's not terribly big. There's not a lot of hills, so it's easy walking. It's very quiet, but you can see and hear tons of birds. That the bottom right, they're using app for bird calls and songs to see if they can get birds to respond or come in. So, and we were also talking about how to describe songs, how to describe calls, how to, what are we listening for to identify or to try to bring them in. Has everyone heard of? I'm sure everyone's heard of Merlin. So I didn't know about it. I thought that was the coolest thing because I'm horrible at identifying birds, even seeing birds really. But if I know there's a bird out in the woods, I can pull that out and it'll list everything that it's hearing. So little things like that were great takeaways. So, but yeah, so you can see, your facilitators are walking alongside of you. You've got pretty much the best of the best in the Audubon world walking beside you and talking about birds and talking about what you're listening for and everything else. So you can pretty much ask them questions. You can about birds, about whatever, about the island, and they're going to be able to answer it for you. Next slide. And sometimes you didn't have to walk very far. So that's one of the bunk houses where we stayed. And there's a parula nest in the tree right there. And it's like paparazzi. I mean, everybody's just trying to get it. Because there was a mother coming and feeding the chicks inside of it. So cool opportunity to see nests, cool opportunity to see what birds do and how they do it. Get everybody's attention right off the bat. So you can see the camera lenses. I have lens envy for most of the week. I brought a 70 to 200 with a 2x converter. You're into cameras. Most of what you see people were using were 200 to 500 millimeter lenses. And they were able to really reach out and get a lot of detail and a lot of telephoto close-ups of the birds. So, but yeah, they actually wound up telling us, all right, back off because it was almost too much. Because every time during the day you see the bird doing something else. So from a habit perspective, it was really cool to see, but there's an opportunity to back off as well. So as far as binoculars, you guys probably have your binoculars, but 8x42s were pretty much the way to go. Some people had 10s. I actually asked some of the facilitators what they recommended, and 8s are pretty much their go-to. It gives you a little bit broader scope. It's a little bit brighter as well than going for a 10. So, next slide. And there was also non-bird adventures as well. So we had an opportunity to look at a tidal pool and kind of look at that ecology. There's to have to appreciate birds is one thing. To have checklists is one thing. To get excited about birds I take out Oregon Ridge is one thing. But to broaden that scope and to talk about in the ecology, how important a coastal area is for migratory birds. How what we need to do to protect this land so that we have birds look at as they migrate through, they're stopping over oftentimes and utilizing this area. And once it's developed, once it's trashed, once it's whatever, that's it for that. That you can see the cause and effect. You can see that migratory ability start to decline. The numbers start to decline. So we talked about the importance of some of the migratory tools that we use. So Doppler radar is a perfect example of something that we think we know about. We see the weather reports, right? And Doppler radar, rain comes in. But what's happening, what that original source of Doppler radar has extracted all the bioclutter, they call it. So there's swarms of insects, there's birds, there's all kinds of things that Doppler radar is picking up that a weatherman doesn't want to see. They have to extract all of that to show you a storm cloud or a rain cloud. And the cool thing about Doppler is it used to be just rotational, but now it's rotational and has height involved as well. So if you're a researcher, you can look at Doppler radar from below ground level, and you can see, is there activity 5 feet off the ground, 10 feet off the ground? And then you can be able to see, okay, that represents birds coming in and using this area. That's why we need to protect it. There's also Motus. Who's familiar with Motus? Right, old people? Okay. You know, that's one thing I forgot to do. Let me see if I can pull up. Does this have Wi-Fi? So Motus, Latin for movement, is a way of tracking birds. And they still band them, but banding represents a need to capture that bird, band it, and then rely on catching it again to extract that information to say, okay, it went from point A to point B. So Motus allows you to put a tracking device on a bird, even as small as an insect, a butterfly. They can let it go, and then now there's towers that are set up around the United States, and some are developing up in Europe as well. And as soon as that bird or whatever passes that transmit or that receiver tower, it pings that bird's information. So you can now have this passive way of figuring out where what the routes are that birds or insects or bats or whatever are traveling. So the idea that you've got this ability to not only, like I said, appreciate birds, but again, look at the impact, look at the ecology, look at the way of supporting that bird population or supporting your hobby, you know. If we have some time, we can pull up the Motus website, and you can actually plug in a bird project, and then it'll hit play, and it'll actually show you the routes that these birds are taking. Next slide. Yeah, so some more coastal stuff. That's again Scott leading a lot of them, but and you can also notice the demographics. This ornithology, I was kind of surprised. There's a whole bunch of age ranges from younger people to older folks, and everyone seemed to take away, to get enthusiastic about the knowledge. We're going to take that away. So we went around the first day, and kind of everyone introduced themselves, and a lot of people were in the nature centers and research and things like that. Some people were just avid birders. So it was really interesting to kind of pick their brains and to kind of hear what knowledge they had to kind of, not supplement, but to sort of enrich the experience of being up there. So yeah, we got some hermit crabs, some seagrass. I'm not sure exactly what they were, but so even when you're not looking at birds, you're looking at ecology for the birds. Next slide. And being coastal Maine, you get to do a lot of trips in the boat. So there was some dusk trip to experience the setting sun with the, you know, how birds or even seals came out when the begin to when the sun was about to go down. There's also Hog Island. That first slide you saw, Hog Island is part of the Project Puffin. So we got to go out and see that research facility, not on the island, unfortunately, because it's too much impact for people to be there. But some of the researchers voted out to us. We had a little Q&A session. They're on that island all the time, and it doesn't sound like a very pleasant experience from what I got from them, but it definitely sounds like a rewarding experience to be that close to that research. The next slide. So, even on the boats, there wasn't any wasted time looking for or ID birds. And the one thing for me, because I'm not a big birder, they were very, very patient about who's able to see what. Even walking in the woods, on the boats, even the boat captain could sit there in the current and idle while they're trying to pinpoint you to something out on land or out floating in the water. So they were very, very effective in getting not only pinpointing you where to look, but also making sure before we moved on, did everyone get to see that, whatever it was. So it was like I said, they were really patient, especially people like me who were just been all over the place.
I love that.
The next one.
I stick boo boo.
Again, so that's Puffin Island down the corner. That's about as close as you get to it, but there's puffins flying and swimming everywhere. So that was pretty exciting to see. I've got some pictures coming up, but some other areas to explore. That was the one island we went to.
I think you're the best boo.
Yeah.
Okay, Stinky.
So
Boo boo.
if you're into cruising, if you're into hiking, if you're into doing that kind of stuff, this is the camp to do it.
What is that image at the top left? Is that just a jetty or a pier?
Yes. So that is I believe that was a facility for either lobster or aquatic harvesting of some sort. There's lobster, I don't know what you call them, the cages of everywhere. Just everybody had them. I guess like crabbing if you live near the eastern shore around here, everybody does lobstering up there. So there's lots of it there. But yes, we got all at that junction and walked inland, and we did some really that was the first time I'd seen bird banding done. So we got to see that and participate in it as well. So, next slide. So there was also these classroom days. That's the interior classroom where we had, if it's crummy weather out, you're inside. It was pretty good weather out. There's the tents that we had to eat under. They had classes there as well. So you got to get, again, not only just the experience of birding, but then you also got to break apart a lot of the natural history, a lot of adaptations, a lot of things that I really dug. So the bottom picture, that's eider down. So, and they had an experiment where you would close your eyes, you put out both your hands, and they put that ball of eider down into your hand, in one of them. You couldn't tell which hand it was in. It's so lightweight, but your hand would begin warming up of whatever hand it was placed in. So they use that, it's used in really high-end insulated products now, like sleeping bags and jackets and things. I mean, everything's kind of going synthetic, and they use goose down and things like that right now. But that was a traditional eider down. And the harvesting, what they're doing now, they were talking about where they're harvesting that so sustainably. That's probably why it's so expensive. They put those in products that they're collecting that from nesting sites, but not necessarily affecting the nesting sites at this point. So they've got that ability to go in there and delicately extract it without disturbing. So, but that was just, again, talking about adaptations that these birds have and how we can utilize them. But they showed us the motive power that they had, I forgot where it's going, but basically they inside, and that's their gift shop. Everybody's got to have a gift shop. So in the corner there, you can get your t-shirts and pumping swag. So, but I enjoyed this part of it as well, because it's really, I mean, I like hiking and stuff, but to get deep into adaptations and how things work with birds, you know, from just basic things like you know, primary feathers. Primary feathers are asymmetrical, right? So the vein goes only on one side or mostly to one side. That's because when they flap, that back side that has more volume can flex up and give forward propulsion. So simple things like that. The winglets on planes they're putting on now, the little vertical parts on wings, that's because the pressure, the lower and high pressure that creates lift. Basically, when the pressure wants to be equalized on the top of the wing. So this neutral pressure wants to encroach on top of that wing, and that actually produces drag. So that winglet is a barrier of that neutral pressure trying to get in and offset the pressure, the low pressure that's happening on top of the wing. So if you look at a soaring bird, an eagle, buzzard, some of the big wings, you'll notice the tips of their primary feathers flex upwards. Nature had already figured that out way before Boeing did. So that's the kind of cool stuff that we've got to talk about. You know, crazy things like there's a bar-tailed godwit. It's a shorebird, lives up in Alaska, and that migrates from Alaska to New Zealand nonstop, 6 to 8 days, continuous flying. So it actually increases its weight by 50% before it takes off. And this happens to them naturally. They have this clock. Like, okay, I'm going to migrate soon. I'm going to start packing on weight. And even their digestive system begins to shrink because why have that extra volume and weight in you when you're not going to be eating or drinking during the 6 to 8 day time frame? So all of that happens naturally with these birds before they begin migrating. So little things like that, you know, my brain was blown. But you know, there's things like I hesitate to get into it, but just since you guys are bird people, there's new theories about how birds can navigate the electromagnetic fields of the Earth to figure out where they're going. And you know, initially, you know, historically, they thought there was a piece of something in their beak that would interfere with it or recognize it, and they would navigate based on that. But there was a theory back in the 70s, and the guy was actually laughed at back then. But there's inside a bird's eye is cryptochrome. It's a little molecule, and when it gets hit with a photon from a star, there's an electron that bounces out of that molecule into its neighboring molecule. And now there's an even number of molecules even number of electrons in two molecules. Those two cryptochrome molecules are now quantumly linked. They call them radicals. And what's happening when they're trying to get back, they're trying to reset themselves, it's causing a chemical reaction that amplifies the electromagnetic field and goes up to the visual cortex of the brain. So that's the new theory now of how birds can figure out where they're going. There's behavioral things too. There's you know, hardwiring. There's modeling from parents and things like that. But the idea that a bird can figure out and sort of quote unquote see the electromagnetic field and navigate to that is all happening on a quantum level in their eye. So little things like that. Again, if you want to geek out on birds, this is the place to go. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you get. So next slide. So again, this is the island I was talking about. This is the same cruise that when we went to Puffin Island, we stopped here as well. So you can see the bird banding, the mist nets that were set up. So if anybody's been involved with banding birds, they're really dark, very, very lightweight net set up between two poles, and then they'll use speakers to call in birds, and they kind of hit the net and then come down into little net pockets. So it doesn't really hurt them, but they'll bag them up. They'll weigh them, they'll measure them, they'll write all that stuff down. They have you write the stuff down there, and then they'll talk about what kind of bird they were and all that stuff. But they're doing a research job at that moment. They're recording those things. They're using bands that are cataloged, and we are doing research at that point. But I was going to say, this is just an example of the conservation efforts that are being done in the field right now. You can be part of, you can participate in. And, the cool thing is, eating lunch, you're sitting eating lunch, stuffing your face next to Scott Weidensall. You've got people, again, the creme de la creme of the birding world sitting right next to you, and you just talk to them. You can talk to them about sports, you can talk to them about birds, you can talk to them anything. I mean, a lot of these camps, a lot of these places, the staff and the facilitators oftentimes are just kind of go amongst themselves, giving themselves a break, or just not be too inclusive with the attendees. Not here. And you're sitting there, you're standing in line for your stuff right next to some really, really awesome people in the birding world. So speaking of food, next slide. So let's get into camper husbandry. So, you could have a great experience doing birding stuff, but if your stomach's growling or you didn't get a good night's sleep, you're gonna have a miserable time. So, as I said before, when you check in, they talk about what your dietary needs are. I'm a pescatarian, so I don't know what I meat, but cool thing of in Maine, there's not a whole lot of red meat anyway. You're getting seafood almost all the time. You're getting farm-to-table stuff. They did a great job in telling you exactly what you're having, gluten-free or meat-free or whatever. Everything's listed there for you. So you had a great time just getting your food on. Down there is our bell. So you can see they're putting on hearing protection. That's kind of the school bell. So pretty much anywhere on the island you hear that, but that would tell you when an activity is ended, you're ready to switch, or obviously when supper's ready. So, all right, next slide. And of course, you can't be in Maine without having lobster. So that was one of our final nights. Does anybody know what the birds are down at the bottom? No one's a puffin. Yep. So the other one's a guillemot. And I got a couple pictures of, well, at least one picture of a guillemot. You'll kind of see they nailed it pretty good. So little things like that, being creative, being innovative, and having some really good food available to you was really important. And you can see, they list everything here that you can have, that you can figure out what you can eat, what you can't eat, what's available. Almost everything was locally grown. So if you want to eat some good food, that's the place to go. Next slide. And I usually, when I travel, I usually take sort of documentary pictures of where I stayed, and of course it helps me out when I do things like this. But so the rooms are basic, but they're comfortable. You get a bunk or you get a bed. You share your bathrooms. And with COVID, I was actually pretty lucky because they were just opening up as COVID was sort of winding down, or not winding down, but managed. And so they cut their camp attendance by half. So we had our own rooms, but otherwise you'd share a room with a bunkmate. So the showers and things the bathrooms were shared. You get your own shower, you get your own little vestibule going into the shower that you could change. So, yeah, it was kind of bunkhouse style. So they said that in the information sent out previously or before we went, to bring a sleeping bag. They offered you sheets though, so I brought a sleeping bag just for kicks, just so I can. But sheets are provided for you. So, and that was the the scene out of my bunk or my room's window. So get to see the facing east. So I got to see the rising sun over that bay every morning. So just absolutely gorgeous area. Any questions so far? Are we going to wait till I'm jumping the gun? But, so anyway, next slide. So let's get into the meat of it. You guys are birders, so we're going to talk about the birds, or at least see the birds, or give you guys a glimpse of what we saw up there. So again, full disclosure, I'm not a birder, so I'm horrible at identifying birds, but I know that's an osprey. Cool thing about ospreys, when they get their fish, they point it in the direction they're flying, but down a wind drag, right? So they're also semi-zygodactyl. So that means they have the ability, forget my pinkies there, they have the ability in the helix in the back, 3 in the front, they can move their fourth toe back to match their helix, so they can then have 2 and 2. So the ability to adjust on the fly to pick up something bigger. Plus they have a texture on the insides of their talons or their feet, because fish are slimy. So but the ability to move it's like eating a sandwich. You know, you get a big enough sandwich, you got your pinky underneath of it with your thumb to grab it. Same thing with ospreys. Does anybody know of another species of bird that can do that? You'll find out. You'll find out. Okay, so so a great shot of, and I'm going to give props to the photographer. This is a professional photographer. There's no way I can get those shots with my camera, so I'll give him props a little bit later on. But yeah, next slide. So again, some really awesome shots if you have a good lens. Because you remember, you're on a boat. A lot of these were taken during Puffin Island. So if you're on a boat that's moving, the bird is flying by, and you could tell everybody had their cameras on burst, you know, like as these birds fly by. But you get these cool shots. I don't know if you can make this out. I mean, this bird is actually twisting. I'm not sure what's above him that caused him to do that, but you can see his back or his bottom is sort of starting to twist, and by the time he gets to the top, he's facing upwards. So just really cool bird experiences. And of course, that gull over there is whooping down a little crab. But that's a guillemot. So guillemots have think back to that cookie, they've got the white markings and the red feet. So that was the big. Is that a Asian guillemot? I don't know. Okay. I think it is. Yeah. I heard the word guillemot so much up at that camp that I couldn't begin. And the same thing with gulls. You know, I mean, there's so many gulls. The seagull is a misnomer, so I couldn't tell you what type of gull that is. But so next slide. I'm sorry. That might be an eider, actually. Oh, cormorant. Yeah, you're right. Cormorant. Yeah.
I think the eider was the image at the top right.
Okay. We'll see you guys no more than I do. You got ready to go when you guys go to this camp. Start shouting them out. And this just gives you an idea of again, you have a 200 to 500 millimeter lens, you can get in tight like this. That's the Perula down the bottom. That was the nest that everybody was taking pictures of outside of our bunkhouse. But now a lot of these were taken at the time of the banding as well, to get real close up on them. We talked about identification, the banding on the wings or around the eyes, things to look for when you're identifying birds. Again, I am not very good at it, so I took some notes.
Did you actually hold it in your hands?
I did not. No, the facilitator did that. Although I did find out, and I'm hoping to participate in this year because they canceled it last year because of COVID, but the citizens, the Smithsonian down in, I'm totally blank now, not Pasadena. Anyway, there's an owl, solid owl research that you can do, and they're catching them, banning them, and it's right down in southern Maryland that you can go and do. Like I said, so it's through Smithsonian, but citizens can volunteer to come in and help out with that. I want to do that last year again, but that was I didn't know about that, and I was talking to someone from Maryland, actually another MOS scholarship recipient, and she was telling me that she was involved with that. So not only are you able to kind of just geek out with birds with the facilitators, people who know their stuff, but also your fellow campers. You never know what opportunity is going to come up. Next slide. So that's Puffin Island again. Puffins are awesome. I mean, they just the way they move, they're climbing up the rocks at the base there, swimming. You can see them with fish in their mouth to get the they can measure their beak size by how many fish they can. So if you're just observing them, if they got a bunch of fish, you can actually measure their beak and take that data point. So, but yeah, Project Puffin's up there, and it's a thrill to kind of see them doing their thing. So, and there's non-avian fauna up there as well. So again, the seals, we saw them. A lot of the cruises, you go by these kind of rock islands, they're just hanging out. And garter snakes as well here in the reptile.
What's the one on the top right?
That is the question. It's a big moth. What? Okay. Now, I'm intrigued about insects, but I have a hard time. That's why I use a Seek app. Everybody have a Seek app as well. It's a naturalist app, and you could filter through insects. You could even break it down to arachnids. You can do plants. You can do just about anything. Amphibians. Take a picture of it, or at least have your camera open and you're kind of going around different angles of it, and it'll break down the taxonomy of it and what it can tell you eventually what the common name for that is. So I rely on that a lot because I can't remember squat. So the ability to, I mean, if there's a plant you don't know about in the woods, you can take a picture of it, and the Seek app will tell you exactly what it is. The next couple of slides, I'm just going to let you take that in. Obviously, birding is the ornithology camp is about birds, but being in that area of Maine, specifically Hog Island, you've got some extraordinary places to hike and see. The few downtimes that you had, you were able to just walk, and that was kind of, I love that the best because I kind of like to walk by myself, but just wandering these woods again, there's no steep hill, there's nothing, you're just walking in these very lush Maine kind of primeval woods. So they got a little tank there for, they actually had it filled up. It was empty when we got there, and they had it filled up with stuff. I guess they were getting ramped up for the next camp, but yeah, I mean, you got rocky shores, you've got just amazing. I mean, that's what you wake up to every day. No, there was one of the facilitators had her stand up paddleboard, and as far as I know, she didn't fall in. So the water is pretty cold. No. Yeah, so that's the inside classroom over here. But even on foggy days, even on rainy days, I mean, just all the colors pop, all the moss is really cool to look at. You know, there wasn't a bad day. Mosquitoes were apparently awesome that year. Elizabeth, who had gone in 2019, told me that they had a little trouble with them, but you get this constant breeze off the water. And, you know, we didn't have any problems at all, but. Next one. Yep. So again, this was supposed to be in April, so I was hoping to get some plugs in for the upcoming classes. Or you can kind of get an idea of when and where they are. You go to Hog Island at .audubon.org and see next year's lineup if you want to go to the ornithology camp. I definitely recommend it. You know, I gained so much knowledge from the staff, and you know, I was just kind of a sponge to kind of take it all in. So they've got some really unique opportunities. I did the field ornithology. That's going to start next week. But fall migration, I'd love to go and do that one. No, the MLS scholarship, you have field ornithology. I believe you have it's more education focused. So I'm not sure I even see. Yeah, there was three. There was the field ornithology I chose because it's kind of the most, to me, sort of the most informative. Some of them were education centered. So if you're an educator, how to present information better to teens or to whoever. So depending on what you're into, you can certainly look into those. But speaking of MLS.
There's a second one, sharing nature.
Yeah. So these are all the recipients for the last 2 years because they full on canceled the previous years. So Jess, who's the director up at Oregon Ridge, she won a scholarship. I think you guys are up to 4 now because yep.
Is that Allison on the right? Oh, yeah. Allison Moore.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
The red or the darker?
the red.
Red.
Yeah, she's on our board now.
Okay.
Yeah.
We should have gotten her in here. She probably done a better job than me. So yeah, I mean, the appreciation that we all felt for that opportunity to get up there to do this. I mean, it's sort of a little bit out of my budget right now. But the ability to gain all that knowledge, to be able to pass that along, it's just really, really something. You know, the sense of conservation, the importance of stewardship is what I try to translate to people when I take birds out at Oregon Ridge. To be, you know, birding is sort of a means to an end. It's something that's a checklist. It's instant gratification. You see the bird, that's awesome. But, you know, again, broadening that out, you begin to appreciate and want to protect and want to be a steward for that environment, for the things that make that birding possible. You know, things like Lights Out Baltimore, I'm sure you guys are familiar with them. And the idea that we have a responsibility to be stewards for nature, particularly birds. So I definitely appreciate we all did. We had a little sign. By the way, Brian, I'm going to assume that second G is a soft G. Brian Genge, if you want to look him up on Flickr, he was the photographer. He does his own photography, but he was the photographer for our camp. So all the awesome pictures you saw there was probably his, well, the mediocre one, especially with me in it, or probably Jess, because she went with me, obviously. She was taking cell phone shots of me doing my thing. So, so definitely it was a excellent experience. So, all right, final slide. That brings us back to what I do at Oregon Ridge. You know, I can talk all day about birds and start, you know, fact vomiting the call at the zoo. A lot of that stuff is forgotten about. But what's deeper, particularly when it comes to folks that you connect with, especially younger folks, you can see their eyes just kind of light up when you really start hitting some of the really cool details and adaptations and things. That's setting the next generation up. That's continuing this. That's continuing this on, and that's what we want. And that's the idea of the scholarship. That's the idea of what I do. So, with that, I'll thank you very much for the opportunity to go to Hog Island, but also the opportunity to come out and talk about it. What questions do you have?
First picture, everybody's in a circle and they're looking at the ground. And there was something, you were talking about titles. What was that?
So that's on the island. There's a couple of areas on the that will be accessible only when the tide's out. And when that happens, you've got all this flora and fauna available to examine and look at and, you know, step around and figure out everything from you know, from hermit crabs to if I can find it. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, essentially, that was we had our nets, and we go in there and pull out, you know, stuff out of the water, flip over some rocks, kind of figure out what it is that attracts, you know, these birds in these areas.
There's a message from Judith. In addition to field ornithology, there's also 2 additional workshops being offered in 22. One of them is better birding skills. Building better birding skills. And the second one is sharing nature and educators week. So thank you, Judith.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. There were squirrels. There was a couple of deer. I have no idea how they got out there. I mean, it seems like a long swim for a deer, but the Hog Island, there's lots of Hog Island apparently. Basically, back in the day, they would store the pigs on it. Because why you don't need a fence in any area, you've got built-in housing or built-in security for them. No predators, and they can't go anywhere. So, but yeah, we saw some turkeys. We saw some, not that many, but some stuff that wasn't, you know, Perula.
Did you actually ban anything for the Lotus project?
We did not, no. But Kathy Woods does. When we do our, last year was, I think, first year I did it, the migration celebration at Cromwell Valley. We bring out the Lotus stuff, and I get to talk about that. And we are fortunate because Oregon Ridge has a broadwing hawk that we can talk about their migration. They're broadwings. They migrate. It's one of the hawks you can see on Hawk Mountain. They come down big kettles down the Allegheny Mountains.
We see them here from.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Yeah. So they make their way. They don't go over water. They make their way down. There's 2 routes, but the eastern route comes down the eastern side, and they kind of go over the juveniles will land in the southern tip of Florida. The rest of them will make their way from your perspective west, and then down to Mexico and Central and South America. So that way. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, nice. Yeah. Awesome. If you're in the rafters, birds of prey. I mean, there's some cool stuff out there. What else we got?
There's another two questions from Judith. How many people attended your workshop and did you carpool to get there?
Attendees were probably, I think 50 to 75. It's hard to remember. I know our two groups were about 20, 25 people in each group. So yeah, I'm guessing around 50, 75 people. And no, I asked Jess if she wanted to go with me, but she already booked her flight, and so I drove up by myself. So it was me and a case of 500 energy shots in my dashboard. We drove up there. I would recommend skipping New York City. You can take I think 76 up through PA and head over and come out 95 above New York. And that was just a disaster. Going up wasn't bad, because I started out at like 4 o'clock in the morning. Coming home though was rough. So if you're gonna drive, active patience. Yeah.
So there's a Lotus Tower, a new Lotus Tower that has to be. Where is that?
I'm not sure. I don't think she's got one on her new property, 4700.
Nearby, and I think she's gonna move her office to that.
So 4700 is the new office.
Okay.
So that's
Her tower.
yeah. I don't know. I can't remember if there's a tower there or not, but I think it bumps up against state property, so it's probably adjacent to where a tower is. Yeah, I wanted to get one for Oregon Ridge,
Okay.
because I told him, that'd be a great little station to have a computer set up, and you could just go on and look at different birds and see their migration paths. And there's a tower right there that's doing it, but apparently it's kind of expensive to get one installed.
How many hours are you doing it?
I do 2 hours a week. I have a very, that was another factor in me going over there. My full-time work, they said, we want to pay you 8 hours a month to volunteer somewhere.
Okay.
So so I went over, I'm doing 2:30 to 4:30 on Thursdays. Versus Thursday.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I used to volunteer as well.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
What did you think about the Go 8 project?
To go.
Go 8?
Oh yeah. The zip line, I think it was, at the park.
Yes.
I was informed on the tail end of it. I don't know that it's kind of the right place. I get it might be a revenue driver or something to draw people in, but I'm kind of always a proponent of, just play up to your strengths.
Yeah.
It's a nature oriented place. To build, I don't know what kind of tower or what kind of facility, what kind of thing would be there. But yeah, there's a bell curve of development. I went and went to Machu Picchu years ago, and they were talking about putting a cable car up from the valley up to the Machu Picchu.
Right.
So I get it.
Oh, it's canceled now.
That's what I heard. Yeah. No, shot it down.
Yeah, let me ask you just a general question. We have really been engaged in this Oregon Ridge thing. The master plan is the next issue, and this time next week, Tuesday night, there's a meeting online about the master plan. Have you heard anything about the master plan? Is there anything you think we should know as we watch this Zoom?
I've heard of it talked about. It's going to be an extremely slow process from what I've heard. They're in I think from what I've heard, the infant stages of it. So there's going to be like a consultation phase. There's an information gathering phase. There's going to be there's nothing that's going to happen immediately. Particularly when you're looking at government bureaucracy and turning that ship or turning whatever the metaphor is. So, believe me, looking at the facility, looking at some of the things, building up the Raptors on the Ridge program. I got, I got us actually green polo shirts, because they had us, that's a volunteer t-shirt. Like most volunteers get that t-shirt. Like, okay, well, if we're gonna be taking raptors out in on grounds, off grounds, outreach, things like that, but it's a little sharp. So they got us green polos with the Oregon Ridge logo on them. So things like that to begin polishing, to begin making Oregon Ridge stand out as a.
So you could go yourself on that website and make suggestions to the master
Good,
plan.
yeah.
Like what you just said to us. And I would love to share with you the letter. We worked hard on a 4-page letter to the master plan people and the 4 or 5 priorities. And our last priority was about more money for nature education, paid staff, young people from minority and Spanish-speaking communities. And you'll love this line. Far too much of the nature education in Baltimore County is done by volunteers. I mean,
That
when
would
you
not
think
surprise me. That wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, we the volunteers, birders, we're teaching birds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Oregon Ridge would be such a fabulous place if they had a real core
I
of young
agree.
people who were trained like
Mhm.
down in Hog Island
Yeah.
to work with others.
I agree 100%. I mean, I think and that's why I brought in, like I have Rick, who's a part-time staff member from the zoo. He's like Phyllis Taylor, who was actually my elementary school phys ed teacher way back in the day. Happened to be volunteer in the zoo. And again, they restructured the volunteer and the animal ambassador presentations. And we're like, okay, let's just do this. Let's do this at Oregon Ridge. So I brought some really good, high caliber. Another guy, David, he worked at Benjamin Banneker as a volunteer. I think he was staff there, but he volunteered for us. Worked at zoo in Atlanta when he worked and lived down in Georgia. So he brought some amazing stuff to the table as well. So yeah, I mean, the idea. I don't know where, without getting too much into the weeds here, but I don't know where the initiative needs to be. Whether it's exposure to here's the opportunity and casting that net. I don't know where the strategy is for that, or is it making Oregon Ridge so shiny that people automatically want to go and get involved and want to? Because I talk to people about Oregon Ridge and they know about where the symphony plays. They have no idea there's a nature center right around the corner. So yeah, I mean, without getting, I guess, too far into the weeds. I don't know. For swimming, I doubt it. There's a liability. Well, not liability. There's lifeguards and there's some logistics that need to be. I mean, I'm a volunteer, so that might be it's obviously out of my pay scale or my pay grade. So any questions come through?
That's it.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, you guys have heard what I do with the knowledge I brought back from the campsite. Would you like to see what I do?
Yeah.
Yes, it is a nation's future. So this is what I do. I take these birds prey out. I talk to people about them. Talk about some cool adaptations. So to answer my query earlier, owls. They can move their third toe back to match their heels. They can do 2 and 2 based on what they're picking up.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So, and you can see that great ability to turn its head to get its beat on something. Owls can turn their head almost 270 degrees. I tell kids, if you turn your head over their shoulder and keep going, you can look over your opposite shoulder. So there's a reason for that. It's not a party trick. There's a reason for that. So owls have this facial disc, these feathers that circle their eyes. They work the same way these things do. They have ears on the side of their head, but these things collect sound for us and drive it into our eardrum, right? So the facial disc basically works as a big radar dish. It points its head towards sound. That sound comes up and goes against those feathers and gets driven back to their ears. In fact, owls can move their feathers to make that sound even more acute. Imagine being able to reshape your ear at will to pick up sound. So the ability to keep your body straight and just move your head to the point where you can say, oh, there's my dinner right there. Also, birds of prey, their eyes are fixed, right, in their head. They can't move, they can't roll their eyes at their parents, right? So they always gotta look straight ahead. So there's actually a sclerotic ring, they call it the bone ring, that keeps them in place. Owls' eyes are actually not tubular, not eyeballs that we have. So they can only look straight ahead. So that ability to turn your head now gives you that ability to see around as well. So if you really want to geek out on details, look up, Johns Hopkins did a study on the vascular structure of owls' necks. Because to whip your head around like that, there's a reason why owls don't stroke out. That's asking a lot of all the arteries and things going up and down like that. Ours don't move that much. So the vertebral artery that goes up the back of our vertebrae, the hole that it weaves through on us, it's about the same size as the artery. On an owl, it's 10 times the size. It enters the vertebrae a little bit higher up than ours. Ours enters the base of the neck. Theirs skips a few vertebrae. So there's a lot more slack and a lot more ability to move to when your heads turn around like that. And they have more vertebrae. Yep. Yep. So they also found they were pumping dye into deceased owls to see where it was going, and they found that there's actually reservoirs at the base of their skull that will collect oxygenated blood. So if there's a kink, if there's something that happens, now there's a backup to that adaptation that allows them to turn their head around. So, you know, you got to figure, you got a brain, you got two huge eyes. We have a little visual at Oregon Ridge. It's a styrofoam, looks like the size of a softball, some styrofoam ball. And that would be, so imagine a softball, that would be the size of your eye if you had an eye to skull ratio that an owl does. That's how big your eyes would be. So there's this brain up here is pretty much, or the skull up here is pretty much a brain and two huge eyes. In fact, some owls, you can actually look through their ear flaps and you can see the back of their eye because everything's kind of built in there. So these are called plumicorns, by the way. They call them also ear tufts, but that's not where their ears are. If there was a dog in here, you'd really see the ability for him, by the way, this is Monroe, to use those plumicorns. So when we're at Oregon Ridge, somebody's walking a dog, never can somebody's going to walk a dog past you. What he'll do is his body erect, he'll close his eyes just enough so he can see, but a predator can't look up and see there's two eyes and something that potentially they could eat. And he'll put his plumicorns up and he'll look like a broken off piece of branch. And what I typically do, even when that's not happening, I'll put him up against a tree. This coloration blends right in. Particularly since screech owls are, they're cavity dwellers. You can get the screech owl boxes if you want to hopefully get them in your backyard, but they are, I'm not even using my microphone. Is everybody complaining that you can't hear me?
Could you get the whole little
Yeah. Sorry, everybody at home. I completely forgot I was supposed to be using the microphone. So, so you can also see his drooping wing. So this is a rehabilitated bird from a West Virginia raptor rehabilitator. This is what he should look like. So he's got a break up in his yeah. So he still flies okay. He flies kind of like a chicken, but he's not going to be able to survive out in the wild. We believe it was probably a car strike. That's what happens with a lot of these raptors. You see a knocked over trash can or some litter. Somebody throws an apple core out the window on the road. It's like, no, it's biodegradable. Or a windstorm knocks over a trash can. What feeds on that trash? What this guy eats. So when it attracts the mice and attracts the things that that are going to feed on it, well, then that attracts these. And as good of flyers as they are, they're not going to outrun a 50-mile-an-hour car. So oftentimes we see these car strikes as the culprit. We also see window strikes. We also see poisoning. We see there's we just got a red-tailed hawk in that I'm working with, getting him or her glove trained, and it was hit by a car, so it's partially blind in one of the eyes. It can fly pretty well, but it's not going to be able to be released. The wildlife rehabilitator got radiographs on it and found out there's shot pellets also in this bird that had healed, and there wasn't any outward sign of it. So you get things like that. That's the importance of wildlife rehabbers. Kathy Woods does her thing. And the idea that, again, going back to the fact that we are stewards. Like I said, I can talk all day about this animal and have everybody ooh and ah about it, and have kids make their owl sounds to me and everything else. But if they walk away with the idea that we have a responsibility, we don't have sharp talent, we don't have great eyesight, we don't have we don't have facial disc. We have a big brain though. We have a lot of industry potential with us. But with that, with our big glass buildings down in Baltimore, with our lights on that we can have all day long or all night long, the other side of that is we need to take responsibility for how that impacts these animals. So that's what I kind of try to instill. At the end of the day, we talk about, again, adaptation, some cool facts, but if they can walk away with a sense of awe and of appreciation, let's say, of these animals, then that's my goal. That's the goal of, I'm talking about you. That's the goal of what we do at Organ Ridge. So
How many animals do
I don't know off the top of my head. We have, raptors. We have, I think, 4 now. Yeah, broadwing, screech, red tail, and the bard. But snakes, yeah, we have snakes. There's a starling, I think, and of course we have ducks. There are a couple of turkeys, I think, in the lower pen. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and that also goes to the you guys have heard of the avian flu that's going around right now. We're spraying our shoes every time we walk into the nature center and the muse to get these out, because that's a risk. That's another reason Kathy Woods actually has stopped going to some of her outings until the fall. That when the weather turns cooler, that'll go away and she'll be back out. But we just had a Stony Run Bird Festival last week, I think, and she was asked to go, but she borrows birds. She doesn't have birds. It's a conflict of interest for her to keep birds when she's trying to rehabilitate them and get them out. So she borrows back the birds that she's given to nature centers. And nature center, that's the role of nature centers. I mean, unfortunately, this isn't something that happens very easily. A rehabilitator needs to assess what the temperament of this animal is to see if it makes a good fit for a nature center. Sometimes you're asking a lot for a bird that's used to flying, used to living and escaping and doing its thing, to go against that hard wiring and now be tethered to me, and have me this close, and have my voice, and have kids pointing fingers at it and everything else. That's a big ask. So some birds, it's too stressful for them. If they in nature, unfortunately, I tell people nature doesn't have handicap parking, or these concessions for if you injure your wing and you can't hunt, or our barred owl's got cataracts, that it's unfortunately a cascading effect. You can't eat very well, you can't hunt very well, so you get weaker. Maybe you get prone to a disease, or maybe you get preyed upon. So all these things sort of cascade into the death of an animal. But sometimes also being in captivity is a much greater stressor. So we choose, or rehabilitators will choose their ambassadors, potential ambassadors, pretty particularly. So, but all right, what are we doing with time? Are they gonna kick us out?
8:25.
8:25, okay. So, okay, all right. Well, I will let the folks at home get more and more.
Did you get the streets?
I cannot, no. You know, and the,
I don't know if it's a good idea to do that. I'm just asking.
well, you know, and their screech isn't like a screech. It's like a high pitched kind of trilling sound.
It's wonderful.
It's like a little bit higher than that. The only owl call I can do is a barred owl. That's my claim to fame. That's it. The who cooks for you all. I don't know what I just said, but that's, so yeah, when I have the barred owl, I usually do that. But, I don't think so. I don't know. I don't work with them enough. I don't think. The barred owl always seems to look at me when I'm handling her. I don't know if that's something there or not, but she always seems to just kind of look. Well, even in that picture, she just looks at me. So, but yeah. So some really neat adaptations. If you want to come out and see some more, hear some more, learn some more, come out to Oregon Ridge, and on Thursday, yeah, 2:30, 4:30. Phyllis is there Tuesdays. I think she's there Tuesday mornings. And we're trying to get people out on Saturdays too, but you know, we're volunteers, so oftentimes life kind of gets in the way. But we do. When we were out, we had the Raptors out for the Music in the Woods Festival this past Saturday. We'll have them out again at the Pride Field Day at the Oregon Ridge Park next Saturday, the 11th. So there's some opportunities to come out and see us, but follow on Facebook. Oftentimes they'll put out, you know, when we'll be out. But again, 2:30 to 4:30 on Thursdays. I'll be there. So, any other questions? All right. Thank you again.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks.